All right, welcome back to Athlete Builder. It's Jim Beebe and Lucas Lorien here today. First time for us, we have a coach in the rugby world, John Harley. He's the head coach at Marion University here locally in Indianapolis. We got John on today. I'm looking through his bio here, and before I get into that, John basically runs the whole gamut, wears all the hats in running his team. Growing up, played multiple sports, and most recently was playing college football at a small school out in Kansas. Finished there in the mid 90s, and that's when after that he started getting more into the rugby world. Before Marion, he was coaching high school rugby on the northeast side of town at Fishers High School. Now he's with Marion, been there since 2019. Team had a good year, went 5-2, made the playoffs, lost in the first round unfortunately, but been building on the culture ever since. I'm not that overly familiar with rugby like most of America, but I've been getting more and more into it the last 7 or 8 years. My wife and I went up to Chicago and we watched four international teams come over and play, or three plus the United States. Essentially, I wanted to see the All Blacks, and they sent over and I wanted to see them. It was at Soldier Field, so I've been watching it, learning more. I even got a book, Rugby for Dummies, and went through that. 'Cause I'm like, hey man, what's a prop? I don't get it. Or what's a hooker? Like that sounds pretty sweet, So my wife's cousin, he coaches rugby at Penn High School, in northern part of the state. So when the high school they had their national championships this year at the Moose Lodge up there, he runs that. So. And then my high school, St. Ignatius, they have a decent rugby program out in Cleveland. So I always like it. I kind of liken it to football meets soccer, where there's physical contact, but you're running all the time. For those that don't know, there's two different kinds of rugby. There's the 15s, which has some of the big boys, and the lighter folks, and then the 7s. It's all lighter folks just running full tilt, all gas, no brakes. So we got a lot of questions today. I want to learn from John about him and his team, his culture, and then tips and tricks. So John, just if you can for all of us, just take us through your, playing football in college and how'd you get into rugby, and then how did that evolve to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So, when I was a kid, rugby, they say, is getting more popular. Certainly the exposure has definitely grown over the time. Like when I was a kid, there was no exposure. So I always say I grew up, I played American football. I played other sports as well, but went to a small school, played some football for a few years. Small, like most of us, small school football was over. I was still pretty young, had nothing else to do. And I'm from the Indianapolis area. I actually grew up in Fishers. But I came back home, and one of the guys that plays with the men's club here in Indianapolis, the Impalas, saw me one day, said I should give rugby a try. And, 30 years later, roughly, rugby's pretty much now, especially now, pretty much all I do. It's just a sport that obviously growing up, I played free safety, strong safety, so I enjoy hitting people. I also am pretty competitive, and I have a short attention span, as my wife would say, so rugby fit that mold pretty well. You're always active all the time. Game starts, and you're pretty much going until it's over, and then you move on. So and then, yeah, I mean, it definitely, as soon as I was attracted to it, I was, and most kids that are in that realm, once they try rugby, they're usually like, that's the most fun I've ever had compared to other sports. So it's definitely been that way. And then, I probably mid-30s, realized playing contact sports for fun probably wasn't such a good idea anymore. Wife, kids. So then that's when I got more into the coaching aspect. My son used to play rugby, but he didn't really, he goes to Marion as well, but he didn't love it enough that he wanted to make it like a full-time job, because at Marion we're scholarship athletes, so we do rugby in school pretty much all the time. But so when he wanted to start playing, I got into coaching, and then the carousel, it went from little kids up to Fishers High School. We did fairly well there. I think the last 4 years I was at Fishers, we were like a national rated high school program. And then Marion decided they were going to start a program. I applied for the job, and here we are now, going into finishing up just like at the end of this spring will be the 4th year that we've had rugby at Marion. So it's still pretty new, but even there, it's been a pretty fast ascent upwards. We started in small D2 college level, but after 1 year, we finished 5th in the nation that year, and they decided we were too competitive for Division II. Our numbers were pretty good, so they moved us up to Division I. So, we presently play highest level you can compete in college rugby here in the U.S.
I saw some bigger teams on your schedule, right? Our opponents,
Yeah.
So I see Notre Dame on there. Is that right?
Yeah. So last fall we played both Notre Dame and the University of Kentucky. Beat both those guys. So in college rugby, because it's not sanctioned by like the Marion's an NAIA school or the NCAA, it's not really the size of your school that dictates where you play. It's more just if you're able to play at the higher level, then you're certainly able to do it. So
essentially, if you can hang
in that sense,
with the big boys, come on and play, right?
Pretty much.
I've been to a couple matches. One was at Ball State years ago, and then Bowling Green. I'm from Ohio, so we had Bowling Green has a decent, consistent program year after year. Does Marion have a women's team too yet, or no?
We do not.
Not yet. Probably it seems to be like I'm sure they keep evolving and coming. With Marion being a smaller school, it's true and all, but it seems like whenever they pick a new endeavor, they don't just dip their toe in. They want to make sure that if they put on another team or another sport or another division, that it's a smaller school, but they're still trying to win, and you see that pretty consistently in the athletic department there, right?
Correct. They've within the first few years of us being on campus, there was a space for us. We have our own dedicated rugby field, which was in rugby senses, all you needed is a green space for 2 poles, and you just go to town. That's how it usually is. But so we had that, but that wasn't good enough. So they hired a company and upgraded the field, added irrigation, drainage, certainly long-term goals to the facility, school board and bleachers, and creating a little rugby stadium. All Marion's campus, there's a big 55-acre wooded area, and the rugby field pretty much sits right in the middle of the woods.
Oh, that's awesome! Right?
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely unique. If you don't know where the rugby field is, then in spring, summer, fall, you can't even see the field. It's just kind of situated back in the woods.
Oh, nice.
And the athletes you guys have there, they're not like they're washed up or has-beens. I've seen some of those kids, they had D1 offers to play football or other sports, but they end up liking, rugby quite a bit. And so you're getting, legit athletes playing in a legit sport. It's not just, hey, can we get enough people to come play or not, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking at your bio, and I'm like, it says that you're in charge of the training, player and skills, athlete recruitment, game strategy, fundraising, tracking the athletes, make sure they're on campus, going to school and all, making sure they're in compliance with all guidelines. That's a lot of hats. You got a little bit of a staff though now, right, to help out a little bit?
Yes, so we do have the coaching staff itself. We have 6 coaches that are on staff. 4 of the guys are volunteers, so they coach with me at Fisher's, and then when I went to Marion, they came along. But they do have full-time jobs, so they make as many sessions as they can, like a normal volunteer. But we do have, so there's myself, I'm a full-time employee, and then Coach Stroman, he's also a full-time employee, so he does some strength and conditioning on the side as well. But so he's at most training sessions and pretty much all those things.
So you guys are working them out in the weight room, but also on the field too to get to play, right?
Yeah, well, for weights, we have our own strength and conditioning coach on staff at Marion. So we have a strength and conditioning coach that he works with the rugby team when we're in there, tracks and monitor those guys. And then Coach Stroman does a good job. The bio, that's kind of first on. Coach Stroman does a good job of doing a lot of the practice sessions, doing those things. So he takes some of that load off. Certainly, again, like with the facility, the goal is eventually we'll have other people. But like everything, like the movies say, you got to build it for them to come. So,
yep,
got to do what you got to do in the beginning.
I get that. I run a gym. It's only been almost 11 years, but you wear a lot of hats also. And then with Lucas and me starting this podcast, no one sat us down and said, "Hey, here's how all this works." It's
right.
Until you have more resources, you kind of figure out as you go, and nothing wrong with that. It's still the life of a college athlete, and the point of this show is called Athlete Builder. We're trying to let folks know about what's it like, how we build athletes. Talk about it's not just all fun and games. It's where you go to school, then you have practice, and you lift a little bit and go home, and it's okay. Like there's so much structure and time commitments. You guys are doing fundraising. You guys have to go out there and be present, and there's pictures, and there's the pomp and circumstance. You're shaking hands and kissing babies, but you're also lifting and doing all this stuff. Talk about what a student athlete's life is actually like, because it's way different than high school. It's that next level up, and you guys are playing against Notre Dame or Purdue's got a rugby team. You're playing against big schools, so it's it's a legit endeavor. So talk about the student lifestyle for athletes a little bit.
I think honestly, like athletes in college, most of the guys, they need structure. I mean, young guys at 18, 19, if they're not told where to be and when to be there, then it's a roll of the dice whether they actually do it. So I think it probably helps them way more than, I'm sure once they get out of college, they'll be thankful for that they had, every week we send out the schedule. They know where they need to be, what they're doing. So we try to streamline that so it's pretty obvious. We're lifting weights. Go in and get your job done.
Right.
We're practicing. Go in and get your job done. And once we get those things done, they certainly have free time to be a kid. But I think structure is something that most 18, 19-year-old guys, without it, man, they'd be wandering around.
Yeah, I know I was wandering around looking for
Yeah.
people to chase or the next party to go to, so I had to learn a lot of things the wrong way.
Right.
Well, with athletes, you got study tables, you got to be at these
Yep.
things, and there's drug testing, you got to be here for that, so, and then everyone's eating at the same time so they can, be an athlete, you got to get enough food in, so it's constant work all the time. Talk about, culturally, because that's you're going to be your number one asset with any business or with any team. The culture is going to drive performance is going to drive results. Some things that you guys try to instill culturally with your team, or some mantras that you guys are you guys push in prior years, and then also in 2024.
Sure, it was. It's structure, or the culture is definitely something we work on. It is a work in progress. I don't know. I guess maybe Belichick has it, or Sabian, they got their culture real dialed in. But for the first couple years, pretty much all high school teams are clubs. So a lot of kids are used to clubs. They meet once or twice a week. They go out. They basically, most high school teams, because they meet so little, it's just kind of pass it to the most athletic kid, see what he can do. Pass it to the next athletic kid. So there's not a lot of structure, skills, things that are very important to rugby, more than just being big and athletic. So when we first started, kids were used to that, like, we'll just show up and play some rugby and have some fun. But as we've definitely progressed, we had a recruiting call the other day where we have some of the existing players that join in on them. He made the mention, like, if you go back and watch our first teams compared to this team, they've definitely gotten better. The structure or the culture is, extra is always good. So yeah, we practice, but when we're done practicing, we're looking for kids to do extra. whether it's kicking, different skills, passing catches, hugely important in rugby. So the better you can be at it, the better the program will be. So it's definitely been slowly but surely, but each year kids pick it up. Each year kids get more competitive. We've been pretty, like you said, we have been pretty lucky. Most of the kids that show up on our team are athletic. So it's just getting the mindset of doing extra is okay.
There's a couple things, in Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line, he always says everything you do plus two. So extra reps or means go above and beyond whatever the task is. I like, if you're in the rugby, James Kerr's book Legacy, which follows the All Blacks, and he simply says in there, champions do more. And everyone's doing the baseline, and the baseline fair, so everyone's doing it, and you're beating everybody with just doing the minimum's great, but that almost never ever happens, right? So yeah, champions definitely do more, whether it's in the weight room or they do more at improving their sleep habits or do more at improving their nutrition. From a fan's perspective, some of those teams that we follow, whether they're pros or college, or whatever, it looks like it's a bunch of athletic guys playing a hard sport that like to, drink a lot of beer once the sport's over. Depending on which club you're at, and you probably speak, the minor leagues with the Impalas or the other local, men's groups afterwards. It looks like it's a lot of fun afterwards too. But that's
right.
Depends on which culture you're trying to, championship level or not quite as much. Is that more pervasive in the sport or less pervasive, or what's your experience there?
Both. Like you said, when I was with the Impalas, that was pretty much, you go out like a club. You play. We have some competitive guys, but you play the match, and then you go out and have a good time. Be a kid.
Right.
And it has definitely been probably, I wouldn't say the number one reason, but it's definitely, I think, a lot of reasons why there aren't more supported college teams in college, is that most people reference rugby as a bunch of hooligans that go out and, after a match, tear up campus and act like, crazy guys. Whereas certainly at Marion, their job is to go to school and play rugby. And I'm all for having fun. And I always tell them, once you've gone to class, once you've done your rugby stuff, you can have fun. As long as you stay out of trouble and I don't get it alerted, then have as much fun as but you can certainly have fun and be respectful of the program and what we're trying to do. So, but it is definitely around the world, rugby. That's pretty much what rugby is known as. You play rugby, you play hard, you run into each other, and then afterwards you go have a social and, move on.
Have a few beers, right? But, you can say that about any school, any campus, or any sport. Anybody can go out and have a good time and take it too far, obviously.
Sure.
I was going to ask that question. With when you're watching, I had a question. Have you been to any international matches or anything like that? The reason I asked is because I love the All Blacks Haka at the beginning, but other Tonga has their own. I think it's Zippy Tau, I think is what it's called. They do their own chant beforehand, and so all those Polynesian countries will have their own chants they do beforehand. Do you know the history of any of those behind that, or why some do and some don't? Because a lot of times when the All Blacks are performing Haka, the other team is just standing there taking it and looking at them,
Yeah.
What the hell's that all about? Someone's screaming at me, and I got to sit there and just not respond. I don't get that. But how come they do and others don't? Can you just educate me a little bit on the international whys and what fors?
Most of the island countries, Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, that was basically back, way before, back when they would have battles, before they would actually have a battle with another country. That was their battle cry. They would perform a Haka, and that's what they would do. And once they got into rugby, like especially in New Zealand, that's the number one sport they play is rugby. So it's just like all the way. You can go to a high school match, and each high school in New Zealand has their own. It's their own version of the Haka. So they all do it.
Okay.
As far as other countries, like you know, to my knowledge, like England when they went to battle, they didn't do any kind of cries. So
No, I sure don't. France doesn't either.
you
Or
know,
anything like that. You know, I noticed like obviously it's a very violent sport. They're always running into each other, blocking people or tackling. Yeah, and sometimes the tackles are illegal. You get a yellow card or a red card.
mm-hmm.
And then the referee goes over to that guy and then tells him, like, "Hey, here's what's going on." And these guys are like these monsters, and they just sit there and they're simply told, to be gentlemen on the pitch on the field as they're smashing into people, and they just sit there and that's part of the deal, isn't it? That there are
Yep.
these warriors out there, what are required to act. Essentially, I don't know how to better phrase, but there has to be a gentleman component in how they conduct their behavior, right?
Yep. So like the big saying with rugby is it's a hooligan sport played by gentlemen. So like you said, as far as speaking to the referee, the only person who's supposed to speak to the referee is the captain. If the referee tells you did something wrong and you talk or do anything too much, then he can increase the penalty. You can get tossed off the field for if you're being too belligerent to the referee. So it's basically, he tells you there's one guy, like especially for our matches, international matches, there's a main ref and then two touch judges, which they're connected through mics and stuff, so they can talk back and forth. But like our matches, there's just one guy on the field with 30 guys, and it's his job to make sure everything's going smooth and everyone respects his calls, and it is what it is. Take it and move on.
Dang. It's you have some specialty, especially with the 15s. The 9 big guys up front. Except I think the hooker's smaller than number 2, and then the next 6 are smaller folks that are faster. Those halfbacks and the flies. With football, it's 4, maybe 6 seconds of hard work, and the play's kind of over, and you have some time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
But with you guys, you need to have these guys. They're thick, big men running into each other, so they're running the whole game, the whole match, like soccer players are. But they still have to be the size to be able to knock people around, like D linemen, linebackers, etc. How do you? Because I haven't really had to train too many. I usually train people to be fast and powerful and explosive, or they're endurance athletes like soccer players, runners that need some strength and conditioning for that. But you guys need these guys to be big and thick while they're running, burning thousands of calories. What are some of the things you guys do differently to build that kind of athlete?
So for especially going into this spring, the first time that we've, again, as the program gets bigger, we just got GPS units, so we'll be able to track that they'll wear these GPS units during training and then matches. So we'll be able to, for instance, like the big guys don't necessarily cover as much ground as the smaller guys, but they need to be able to sprint on and off probably more than the backs and the backs. They need to be able to 5 to 10 meter sprint repeatedly, and the GPS will certainly help. Again, we'll get match data, and then we'll be able to modify our practice sessions so that they're meeting or exceeding, what it would be to be in a match. And it's basically real time data. So once practice is over, they'll be able to check it out. A lot of what we do in practice, we practice going full scope.
Right.
Best way to get ready for a match is practice hard. So that's what we tend to do right now. Your normal wind sprints and things like that, but a lot of it is just constant work over time. eventually builds it up.
Do you guys wear the GPS units when you guys do your workouts and your lifts?
So the ones we have don't have like heart rate monitors.
Yeah.
So we might try them to see what data it gives, but as far as it doesn't, it's more of, so the 5 things that we'll track with the kids are distance. So for the training session or match, the how far they ran, top speed, what is their top speed throughout the time, acceleration points, whether they're accelerating, how many times they have that. It also does, which will be great, is impact. So impact 5Gs or greater. It'll let us know, how many times they're doing those. So those are some of the big things that we'll be doing. And inside the gym, like when they're working out, I don't know how it would benefit them without that heart rate monitor. Some of them have it, but ours don't.
Okay.
Sport-specific injuries, is it typical to football in that it's ACLs and concussions and shoulders, things like that?
Definitely, like a lot of, certainly if we talk about youth, the big thing with America right now and getting kids playing rugby, most parents, the whole concussion argument that goes on. Yeah, well, I won't let my kid play football with pads. Why would I let him play rugby with no pads? Last fall, in the 8 matches we practiced for 12 weeks. We had 0 concussions. So, the laws that are around rugby are there to help protect the head. And certainly it doesn't take very long for someone to figure out the number one thing you need to do in contact is get your head out of the way. So,
right.
But through skills and such, but normal injuries, yeah, ACLs, labrums, we were having to redo our weightlifting program because of the number of labrums we've had. Before I got to Marion, I didn't even know what a labrum was. And now it's like every year, every season, we have 1 or 2 labrum injuries. And I'm like, good Lord. I was like, I don't even know what a labrum is. I'd never even heard of it. And then it's like, so just, working on back muscles, so traps, things that help stabilize the shoulders as they're making contact, running into large individuals with no pads.
So you're talking about the concussions, with your head up more in rugby, the contact's more on your chest and your shoulders. There's not that head trauma because you're not going head to head with the helmet on because you're going to get knocked out. So that takes away that limits the concussions. As for the labrums, you're still having contact there. You can't avoid that. So big shoulders, big back, a lot of work for your neck too, so that when you do land on the ground, you can hold your head where you want it. So it helps with the whiplash and the concussions that way. So you got to constantly build that posterior. And of course, you have stronger hamstrings, core, and glutes. It's going to help with the ACLs as well. So what we always preach to our athletes, one of the phrases is strong back equals strong everything. It's not necessarily all 100% true, but get your whole backside super strong. You at least have a better shot of being protected. How about our guys, Clay Peters, Joe Romero, Joey Jacobs? I want to make sure I ask you about them because they came out of my gym, and a few others. I think Jesus is down there now, and for a while that club team out of Avon would train with us. And so how are those guys doing? Are they making an impact? Are they on the team? Are they doing all right?
Oh, yeah.
Not arrested, are they?
Yeah, Clay actually, so he's a junior this year. He actually just a couple weeks ago, so the governing body that governs rugby, they put out like the top 100 D1 rugby players, and Clay, he plays center for us. He was, he got slotted as one of the top 100 D1 rugby players in the country. So he's
awesome.
Certainly doing well. He went down for the past 3 years. I've helped coach a collegiate all-star team that it's basically broken up. The U.S. is broken up into regions, 8 different regions. So we went down to Austin, and our team, we're known as the Great Lakes. We actually won the All-Stars and the Rising Stars, which are some younger kids. So we won both divisions, which is the first time that's happened. Clay was on that team. So yeah, he's doing really well. Joseph, he's hanging in there. He starts at prop for us. He's doing well. Like we said, some of the mantra of doing extras. It's hard to get some kids. Joe does what he's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much extra stuff he does, but he definitely he does what he's supposed to do. I mean, he shows up to practice hard, works out hard.
Yep.
So yeah, he's doing well. Joey came in 2 years ago. So his freshman year, he played some as a freshman on the varsity team. Last year, because he's a pretty athletic kid, we had him playing fullback, and he started, I think, every match we had last year out of position due to injuries. We just had to swap some kids around, so he was able to move to a different position and doing really well.
You talk about for athlete builder itself, we try to build athletes mentally and physically, and so I always look for tips and tricks and questions I can ask the coaches. Talk about the mindset to perform in the sport of rugby, then also talk about the mindset to prepare to perform, because people get hyped up on game day, but it's that week in and week out, 52 weeks a year of preparation that leads to the performance on the field. So talk about what it takes to play mindset wise rugby at a high level, and what it takes to be a student athlete and prepare at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mentality. I mean, we tell when we talk about doing extras, it just has to be a way of life. Is what just because we're not practicing doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing something. Most everyone that I know, even guys that play rugby, don't really like fitness, but we usually we try to preach more fitness over the gym. To be honest with you, you can squat 600 pounds, but if you can't play rugby for more than 10 minutes, then it doesn't really do us any good. So
it's over. Yeah,
it is definitely a mentality to get to the point where you understand the fitter you are, the more fun rugby is. That's just it. So most big guys are strong to begin with, and you're probably strong enough. Do some weightlifting, you'll probably be fine. But again, fitness is the key to everything. The fitter you are, the better life is.
That GPP, general physical preparedness, like I said, it's like soccer. You're running the whole time. You get a few breaks here and there, but when you're lifting heavy, like a heavy squat, when they're in that scrum, there's that weight on their shoulders pushing against them. Then there's weight behind them pushing. They're trying to drive force into the ground. So you're in a max effort squat for more than the normal 4 or 5 seconds it takes to squat. You can be in that scrum for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. You're exerting everything you can. And that might be in a full isometric squat or push against that scrum. So you got to be, you can start squatting, 5 seconds, you're out of breath then. Then you're in those scrums over and over again, and then you got to run. Because I'm a bigger dude too, so I just think about that. I was like, oh man, that's a whole component. Like, you better run sprints all the time. So are they just doing sleds all the time for their conditioning, or what? Like, is this make love to the sled until the sled quits? What's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, we do push some sleds. Again, for like the forwards, they're more what their fitness is more of maybe they'll run 20-meter sprints where the backs might be running 60-meter sprints.
Sure.
So they're down and back in the back. So we try to give them a little bit different, because again, it's not necessarily, they only need short bursts of gas, and then they give it to someone else and they go and finish. But it is definitely probably, like I said, most kids don't like fitness. Most people don't like fitness, but once they figure it out, it is a game changer. It's probably the difference between being an elite program and a pretty good one. Is your best athletes can last 80 minutes. Most forwards though, the max last 80 minutes. They might play 60. So we try to, front row props and hookers. The goal is to have 2 solid front rows that, your first group goes for maybe a little more, and then the second group comes in and finishes.
Gotcha. it's a whole different dynamic and a whole different component of the sports because you have multiple people coming in, but for long chunks of time. The the team component. Talk a little bit about how they have to be in sync. It's almost like synchronized swimming in the Olympics because all the passes are backwards, and so when that ball's coming backwards, one after another, they all they could be 4 passes down the line. And it all has to run together, or ball turns over, or they don't advance. Talk about how you guys have to build that team camaraderie and efficiency and execution.
Yeah, that's probably number 2 of what kids mostly don't like doing is doing drills over and over and over. But the more the best way to build the timing and the things you need to do is running through it as as hard as you're going to do in a match repeatedly, so that when you take 3 steps and you go to make the pass, he'll be there. He'll take 3 steps, he'll make the pass. That guy will be there, and it's just repeating the same drills, same skills. When we're in practice and we'll get into like match type stuff, we kind of try to emulate, or the defense that's going against the offense will say, this is what we need from you, so that they're seeing the same thing over again. It's just repeating the same thing repeatedly.
It's easy because I'm 49. I could say, hey, do these things, and here's why. Because I'm hopefully matured in half a century, and we're asking these 20-year-olds to think the same way. But just in the couple of things that you pointed out, being in shape and doing the part that sucks, doing the things that suck over and over again, gives you an edge and a chance to win. And you do things that suck at your job, gives you a chance to win. Then when you do a little bit more, champions do more. Well, same thing at your job. If you're always one that checks out early, or maybe it's your marriage, if you're always just doing the minimum, or maybe it's with your kids, or maybe whatever. If you just do more, you got a better, shot at winning. And then you point out another basic thing, that it's the fundamentals, boring, right? Catching ground balls over and over again at shortstop to make that throw to first. It's those tosses, those pitches in rugby. It's the same drill, same fundamental, but it's being able to do that. It's that virtuosity, being able to do the most basic thing, like absolutely perfectly under complete exhaustion and duress, under stress, time component, right? And still execute. Those 3 things alone, I don't know what else you really need. You have your culture, you're doing more, doing the thing that sucks, and you're always working on the fundamentals. Like, it's basically the whole show, right? That's it. You do those things, and there's not much more to it. It's just, can you make love to the mundane? Can you find joy in, hey, I'm going to suffer and I'm going to do this because this is my calling. I'm going to be good at this, and no one else wants to do it. I'm going to learn to love it. And next thing you know, you're on top because you're just doing those things that win.
That's what I mean.
You got to sell it to a 20-year-old.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh man, I'm 50 and I wish I were you.
I try to tell certainly, number one reason they're student athletes, number one reason they're there is to go to school, is to get a degree. I mean, it is important that while I'm the rugby coach and I want to win and success, what's more important is they're going to class. And I at the end of the day, I try to harp on them and repeat all the time. It's just like with sports and all the things you just said. Same thing holds true to class. If you do the malarkey, if you show up to class every day, you turn in your assignments on time, you will pass the class. I mean, you will. If you just put forth the minimum effort, you'll get past class, no problem. If you want to be successful in class, just like everything in life, if you do some extra stuff, then you'll perform at a higher rate in the classroom. And it is, like you said, people always ask me, what's the difference between coaching little kids, like, we start hearing figures 5, 6, like flag, all the way up to where I am now, and I honestly say not much, really. I mean, it's the same principle. You're harping at them to do one thing when they're little kids, and it holds true to where they're older. You still gotta. I mean, they're still young men. They're still growing. So there's not much difference. They're just bigger, faster, talk back a little more. But other than that, about the same.
Do you think when coaching young kids, do you think it's sometimes easier because they have fun doing the mundane stuff at first?
Probably. Yeah, they're just out there, enjoying being out there. Which in some cases, like for even the older kids, probably right now one of the best players we have. He's getting ready to graduate, but his name's J.D. Farrell. He didn't even play rugby through high school. He grew up in Fishers. I knew his family. I actually went to school with his mom. I always tried to get him to play rugby, but he was a wrestler all throughout high school. I think he finished third in the state. And after his senior year, he decided he wanted to try something else. Decided, finally took me up on it. Came to Marion, and he most likely will be like a 2-time All-American, and never even played rugby until he got to first practice at Marion. But he just did those type things. He just came out, worked hard. There weren't any bad habits to break. He wasn't sure what to do. We told him what to do. He did it, and here we go.
Just like that. He never played. Now he's a 2-time All-American.
Yep.
How does that happen? Right?
That mentality. Yeah.
Head down, move forward, constantly grind, pushing, being relentless.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was a great tackler.
He is an amazing tackler. He has a great, probably the two things that if you want to be successful at rugby, obviously tackling and work rate. He always moves towards the ball. And in most cases, if you're moving towards the ball on offense or defense, I would say 75 to 80% of the time, you're going to be in the right spot when you need to be there,
Yeah.
Probably most Americans, they all grow up playing football. Like we said, 4 seconds, they got to work. So a lot of American kids, they'll do what they're supposed to do in their section of rugby, and then they think they can take like a 4-second break to then reset and do the next one. But rugby's pretty much, once one job's over, there's immediately another one you should be doing, and another one, and another, and they just keep repeating. So he didn't really grow up playing football. He was a wrestler. He went out, did what he was supposed to do, and I said, he's a bit of a freak.
Well, I'm sure the mindset of a wrestler and the skills of wrestling probably translate pretty well into rugby. I mean,
100%. It's breaking the football habit. Like in rugby, it doesn't matter how far you go, just as long as the team keeps the ball. So you can be moving backwards for several phases, keeping the ball, and then suddenly you take off. Where most American kids who grew up playing football think they got to get that extra meter, extra 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they end up falling in a bad position for us to retain the ball. The other team gets the ball, and all that hard work was for nothing. So that's a big habit you have to break with football kids. Is it doesn't matter if you get 2 extra meters if we don't get the ball.
That point about the correlation with the wrestlers. We've had a few in our gym, and I like them because they are a little wackadoodle. They're a little nuts. They're having their face smashed into the mat all the time, and they'll do these sessions, whether it's one-on-one, and it's all cardio and strength and power all at once, and then you get a little break and you go again. Sometimes for their mental toughness sessions, they'll be 10 minutes straight grappling. I saw Ohio State and Penn State did 30 minutes just as a mental toughness session. So when they've been in my gym and we're doing weaves with sleds for conditioning, they're hopping up and down. They can't wait. This is great. Hey, I can break someone. I can break someone physically. Watch them quit pushing a sled. They're hopping up and down. They love that. So the physical contact in rugby, and you just kind of keep going, and grind someone down. That's got to be a huge correlation between those two sports. Plus their hand-eye coordination and their ability to manipulate other folks with their hands and leverage. That's going to be huge as well. It's not just tackling; it's the leverage, getting people out of the way. And then when they're in the scrum, same deal. Maybe you guys
For
should
sure.
just recruit wrestlers.
Yep, it's definitely like defensively. Again, JD would be most of the guys that have wrestled defensively. The whole grappling, it's one-on-one. The ability to make your one-on-one moves. Same in rugby. It's not, no one's blocking for the guy carrying the ball, so it's one-on-one. Probably sometimes the hard part for transition to someone that just wrestled was their ability, their ability to catch, their ability to do things with the ball. We have a big kid. His name's Alex Hernandez. He went to Warren Central, was a football wrestler there. He actually came to Marion to play football, and then he played like that. The season that COVID hit, he tried rugby. He got to play one rugby match before COVID hit in high school, and he came to Marion. And there's 150 kids on the football team, so he wasn't really playing. Asked if he could play rugby, and his big work on was he's 6'2.5", almost 6'3", 260 pounds. So his entire life he just played offensive line or defensive line. He never had to catch, never had to do any skills that I'm like, how can you know what's going on here? But he just never had to do it,
Right.
So, and he's worked really hard. He was listed as a top 100 player this past week. So from never playing rugby to just working on skills, and he's definitely improved. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot of sports that can be good rugby players, but at the end of the day, it's mentality.
It's the mindset, right? That pushes. You guys travel internationally at all?
We haven't yet. So in 2017, when I was coaching Fishers, and my wife, when she hears it, I need to make sure. I mean, my wife, we met when I was playing rugby. So basically, we've been married for 23 years. The whole time has been in and around rugby. So she's highly supportive of rugby. So in 2017, she basically spearheaded us taking the Fishers High School team to Ireland for spring break. We got to go over there, play 3 matches, tour Ireland. When they say rugby's an international sport, unlike any other sport I know of, you can go anywhere in the world, not know anyone, find the rugby club, and you'll have friends. Doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter who you are, who you support. Rugby guys just welcome you in, and you're a rugby guy. So it's definitely something we've thought about, but man, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money, but
Yeah.
That was amazing. Have you guys did Fishers travel up to Penn when they had that? They have a tournament up there, right, at the Moose.
Yeah. So
Bart Bodorf, I think, runs that, and that's my wife's cousin. So
yeah,
been around him a few times. He's always talking about.
Yep.
It. He played at Ball State.
Penn, through our rise at Fishers, Penn was in the end, they were they were a big competitor. We competed, I think, the last 2 years at the national tournament. It was out in Kansas City when we did it, so they moved it around from time to time. But, yep, I know Bart well.
Yeah, good dude. Any other tips or thoughts, for listeners that are thinking about rugby or thinking about playing college sports at a high level?
What is highly, I don't know what high school guys, certainly at the college level, high school kids that are interested in playing college sports, certainly rugby would be number one, but any college sport, I would say there's nothing wrong with reaching out and making, if you're interested in playing rugby at Marion, we recruit all over the world, so I can't find everybody. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're interested, I always you remember Rex Grossman? Played football for the Bears, but he was from Bloomington South. And he always told the story that he wanted to play in the SEC, but no one recruited him. So he took it upon himself to send messages to all the coaches, go visit them, ended up getting a scholarship to Florida, and then, played in the NFL. But I'm like, yeah, it's just doing, again, do you want to be a good or basic, or do you want to be excellent? If you want to be excellent, sometimes you got to do some extra stuff. So if you're interested in playing college sports, reach out. All sports.
All sports, and it's not just do the minimum. You have to do more
Yeah.
to, get noticed. I got you guys at your own website, munites.com. There's Marion Knights Rugby on Facebook. Instagram is at MU Knights Rugby. Twitter or X is at Marion U Rugby. YouTube channel, MU Knights Rugby.
Yep.
What do you like to listen to when you train?
I'm a little, like I said, JD's a freak. I'm a bit of a freak. Like when I go to train, I don't really pay attention to music. I just go in and I do what I'm supposed to do.
Gotcha.
So all kinds. When they work out in the weight room, all kinds of music.
Any bucket list adventure for you and your wife to go someplace you haven't been yet?
Yeah, we would love to go to New Zealand.
All right.
You know,
me too.
New Zealand is the capital of rugby in the world. It would be great. I don't know if I could sit on a plane for 18 hours straight though. They'd have to carry me off.
It's about 14 from San Francisco, 13, 14. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So not quite.
Or from there, but it's 4 hours from here to San Francisco.
Yeah, right. There's a break.
Yeah. It's
rough.
I'm an old man. My joints sitting that long for that long. I literally, like when we went to Ireland, I could barely stand up once we got there.
No, you need to be walking around wearing the right socks and compressions and walking around. I remember there was one lady, she was doing air squats on the plane to move to keep her blood flowing. Favorite sports movie?
Hoosiers.
Okay. And then favorite athlete to watch?
I like Owen Farrell. He's an England international player. He's their captain, number 10. He's like he's probably compared to Tom Brady here, but for rugby players, everyone hates him. He looks like he's a huge jerk, but everyone that's ever played with him or knows him says he's an amazing individual, and they all love him. But everyone who watches thinks, "Oh, what a jerk!" He's just, he's highly competitive. He doesn't accept anything less than the best, and is what it is.
Favorite book?
Legacy. It's a good one.
Oh, the one I mentioned, that from James Clear, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, big fan. Superhero. Favorite superhero?
My wife.
Is that right?
Yeah. She does everything, man. If it wasn't for, while I'm a full-time, like I tell most people, I'm a full-time coach. Yeah, it's great. But my wife, she does pretty well for herself, so she makes it even easier. She's way more social than I am too, so she does a bit of recruiting, talks to the parents. Yeah, she's a superhero.
Make sure you we'll send the YouTube link so she can watch you say that. Favorite villain?
My wife.
Oh shit!
Yeah, man.
You're doing so well, buddy.
Well, he'd probably enjoy that one too. There's two things I fear in the world, and she would be one of them.
Oh, no kidding. Favorite lift in the weight room?
I'd probably go with bench press.
Okay. If you had $10 million, what would you do? Other than go to New Zealand?
I would buy an MLR team or buy into, which is the new Major League Rugby here in the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then you have a favorite quote or two?
Yeah, I like probably one of my favorite, Jocko Willink. He always says, every day is a new day, a new shot at life. That's actually my alarm clock when I wake up in the morning to go work out. So I'd like to live that. Every day is a new day.
Yeah, I like a lot. Yeah, I like a lot of his.
He's he's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Decent podcast too, I guess. I've been told. Hey, John, man, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for giving us some information, ideas on what it takes to be a college athlete, some ideas on what it takes to excel in the sport, which translates into life or in the job or in relationships. So it's important. And I like to talk to different folks in all different areas so we can hear either some of the same things or something completely different. So anytime we can help people get better, one of our goals, like in Legacy, it's the whole title of the book is Legacy. It's what kind of impact can we leave? And so that's one of the real main things of why we're putting out this podcast. So, hey, Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for the help.
Absolutely.
Love to have you back on, and then definitely come down and watch you guys play and watch those boys play. This coming season. So.
Yep, it'll be. Every year we get better.